At a recent press briefing, the media, who can't help but politicize everything, decided to ask the president about something Joe Biden has said because the Democrats also just want to politicize everything. And Donald Trump decided to smack down Joe Biden, or as I like to say, nuke him from orbit. He responded by saying Joe Biden didn't write that. It was some Democratic operative who did. And Joe Biden's not even watching this press briefing. And if he is, he doesn't understand it. Now, he's going after a few things. The media and the Democrats the entire time have been playing politics. But not just that, progressives and Trump supporters both agree that Joe Biden is not all with it. Just the other day, Joe Rogan said he'd rather vote for Donald Trump over Biden because Biden's not all there anymore. So I'm going to have to agree with Trump on this one. Joe Biden would not understand it. But it's also true that Joe Biden and the Democrats have just been trying to politicize everything. Early on, when Trump enacted the travel ban from China and then later from Europe, Joe Biden criticized it. Now he's finally on board, even though Dr. Fauci, who everybody seems to like, said it was a good idea. It was a good effort to slow this down. We then see Pelosi and Schiff just trying to, start some investigations. Pelosi with her oversight committee, Schiff with another 9/11 style commission into the response. And then we see Chuck Schumer sending a letter to the president asking him to take certain actions that he had already taken. Apparently, Joe Biden did the same thing. The Democrats aren't getting on board. The congressional and federal level Democrats aren't getting on board with solving the problems. They're just trying to make everything about politics. The media then hops on board, protects Joe Biden, even though everybody who, any rational person can see he's not all there. And they go after the president. They criticize him, they smear him, and they say he's making this political. He's throwing, childish name calling around. Yeah, you know what? He kind of is. That smackdown to Joe Biden and the Democrats, I got to admit, was kind of funny. A little mean, but But they're the ones going after the president for his response, while basically both campaigns are suspended. But what can Joe Biden do? I mean, to be fair, it's an election year, and he can do nothing. He's proving completely useless. That's why this smackdown was so severe. Trump saying he's not writing it, showing he's doing nothing. And even if he's watching this, he doesn't know what's happening. A serious smackdown showing the Democrats aren't doing anything but gumming up the works while everyone else is trying to get the job done. Let's see what's going on. We'll get started with this story from Fox News, which I find kind of funny. Trump praises, then dings Biden during coronavirus briefing. Biden didn't write that tweet. It's funny because Fox, he's not really praising Biden. He's rubbing it in his face because Biden finally came around and agreed the travel ban was a good idea. Let's read the stories. Before we get started, however, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are several ways you can give and help the channel, but the best thing you can do, share this video. That really, really does help. It helps the channel grow, helps me overcome the algorithmic hurdles being dropped in front of me. Just make sure as well to subscribe, hit the like button and the notification bell if you want to get more videos like this and support the channel. Let's read. Fox News says, President Trump on Saturday dismissed a critical tweet from Joe Biden saying the former vice president couldn't have authored the post because he doesn't write. Biden tweeted Saturday, just before Trump's White House coronavirus briefing began, that Trump wasn't responsible for COVID-19, but he is responsible for failing to prepare our nation to respond to it. When asked about the tweet during the press briefing, Trump said a Democratic operative wrote it and implied Biden wasn't capable. Look, man, I'm pretty sure every Bernie supporter and Trump supporter agrees, and that's like the overwhelming majority of this country. Yeah, Biden's not capable of writing that. I'm sorry. He doesn't write. He's probably not even watching right now, Trump said of the televised daily briefing. And if he is, he doesn't understand what he's watching. Woo, spicy, Mr. Trump. The Twitter prolific president added, Biden didn't write that. He wished he did, but he didn't. Earlier in the briefing, Trump had kinder words for Biden. He acknowledged the former vice president is the probable 2020 Democratic nominee and said he appreciates Biden's support for the travel ban he enacted from China at the start of the coronavirus outbreak. Trump said it was very nice to hear Biden's backing Friday, especially since he took a lot of heat as being xenophobic and racist at the time he enacted the ban to slow the spread of the virus, Trump said. No, Trump is gloating and rubbing it in Biden's face. You see, early on, of course, it was all about politics. You know that Adam Schiff still had an investigation into Trump during and after the impeachment while all of this is going on. Now, of course, in the media, they'll say there's no evidence to suggest that the impeachment actually slowed Trump's response. And you know what? That's Trump giving him a freebie. Trump said he wouldn't have done anything differently even if impeachment didn't happen. He didn't need to say that. Mitch McConnell was claiming impeachment was a distraction. But of course, the media will have their back. Let's read a little bit more. Biden's campaign on Friday told CNN that Biden backs Trump's restrictions on travel from China amid the global coronavirus pandemic. Deputy campaign manager Kate Bedingfield said Biden supports travel bans that are guided by medical experts, advocated by public health officials, and backed by a full strategy. You see, that's how they try to weasel around the fact that early on they were going for politics. Look, it's always been this way. If Trump does it, it's bad. So when the travel ban first started, Joe Biden was tweeting about climate change. When Trump started talking, when Trump tweeted, when Trump gave the press statement about travel from Europe, Joe Biden said it was a bad idea. I kid you not. Check this out. On March 12th, Joe Biden said a wall will not stop the coronavirus. Banning all travel from Europe or any other part of the world will not stop it. This disease could impact every nation and any person on the planet, and we need a plan to combat it. This is the only thing they have. So, you know what? Trump's right. Biden clearly wouldn't understand it, and neither would his operatives, the people working on his campaign in the DNC. They have no idea what they're doing. If Trump says it, just say the opposite. It's kind of like George Costanza in that episode of Seinfeld, if you know which one I'm referring to, where he just does everything. He says he's going to do the opposite of everything he would normally do. That's all they're doing. In response, Elizabeth Harrington of the RNC, a GOP spokeswoman, said, quote, "Be quiet, just let the experts speak." And she played a clip of Dr. Anthony Fauci saying the travel bans are helping. It was a good move. It was prudent to do. So why would Joe Biden speak out contrary to Dr. Fauci? Because the whole game they've been playing, orange man bad. Joe Biden's going to do the opposite. Pelosi's going to want to, do an oversight committee. Schiff wants to investigate. And Schumer is saying, Trump, do these things. And Trump's like, I did those 2 weeks ago. They clearly have no idea what's going on. They're sitting back and reacting to the president. No matter what he does, it was the wrong move. So no, Trump was not praising Joe Biden. He was gloating that he was right and they're being forced to come around. The Biden campaign did not immediately respond to Trump's latest criticism of the tweet, but the campaign continued to make the case that Biden is better prepared to handle the global pandemic. That's absurd, and you're out of your mind if you think so. When Donald Trump was disregarding warning after warning and misrepresenting the dangers the coronavirus posed to the American people, Joe Biden was sounding the alarm about this historic threat. Andrew Bates, the Biden campaign's rapid response director, said in a statement, "That is such an absurd lie. It is mind-boggling. I've already shown you in previous videos, Joe Biden was tweeting about climate change and impeachment. And on March 12th, Joe Biden disagreed with the medical health experts. Ignore Trump. Trump did some stuff. The doctors said it was the right move, and Joe Biden disagreed. No, he'd be very, very bad. And you know what? Joe Rogan agrees. We'll get to the latest update there. Bates continued. When Donald Trump was gullibly praising China's handling of the crisis, Joe Biden publicly urged him not to buy their spin. Now there are more coronavirus cases in the U.S. than any other country in the world, and we're losing jobs at record speed. The American people deserve to see competence, empathy, and strength in the Oval Office again. I agree with that last sentence, and it certainly ain't going to come from Joe Biden. So we have the latest update. I gotta do this. The Joe Rogan thing. You see yesterday what happened? Joe Rogan in a podcast with Eric Weinstein said that he would rather vote for Trump over Biden because, let's be honest, Biden's not all there. Bernie Sanders is now under pressure to disavow Joe Rogan's endorsement after Rogan said he'd vote for Trump over Biden. So all of these Democrats are coming out of the woodwork to pounce on the fact that Rogan would rather have Trump. They're saying things like this proves that Bernie Sanders is, fueled by far-right bigots and all that stuff, as if Joe Rogan was actually that, instead of realizing that Bernie's, like Joe Rogan being like a regular dude that people actually like and listen to, Bernie Sanders was able to attract regular Americans, people like Joe Rogan, and they threw it out the window for someone like Joe Biden. So Joe's a good dude. He's got his opinions. He's certainly not right about everything, and he's even self-deprecating to that effect. But that shows you that Bernie Sanders, he speaks to people. He really does. Now, my beef with Bernie Sanders is more so on some of the latest flip-flopping on immigration, some of his policies which I think don't work. But I'll tell you what, man, Bernie Sanders can actually articulate his ideas. They may be bad ideas, but he can speak. Trump certainly has some bad ideas too. Bernie and Trump both have good ideas. I'm not here to tell you who you should or shouldn't vote for, unless it's Joe Biden, because I agree with Joe, man. Look, when you go to the voting booth, I don't care. But Biden, seriously? I can't believe some of my friends who actually said they think he has dementia, but they'd vote for him anyway. To me, that's absurd. Let's take a look at this piece from Real Clear Politics, which talks about the politicizing of what's happening with COVID. They write, President Trump initiates a flurry of actions to address the historic virus challenge. Through legislation, executive orders, and travel bans, he embraces the role of a wartime president, marshaling all the capabilities of our great nation to counter and ultimately defeat this invisible enemy. Inevitably, in decision-making amid the fog of war, some missteps unfolded and some misstatements were made. But the big picture reveals an impressive mobilization of the public by government at every level, as well as the genius of America's private sector. The American public traditionally rallies to action-oriented leadership, and this is no exception. Last week, the Gallup poll reported a 60% approval rating for the president on his handling of the virus. In addition, Trump's overall approval rating hit the highest of his presidency per the Real Clear Politics polling average. In contrast to Trump, the commander-in-chief, the dithering Democrats prefer to blather and use the critical moments of a national crisis to play politics. Biden's main super PAC, Unite the Country, has directed millions of dollars towards airing a TV commercial using demonstrably false smears against the president. The ad repeats the often cited falsehood that Trump called the coronavirus a hoax, as even the Trump antagonistic Washington Post concedes. Trump clearly referred to Democratic attacks upon him as a hoax. And PolitiFact, again, not a big fan of the president, concluded the same thing. And not the malady itself. The Biden attack ad also claims that Trump eliminated the pandemic response team. This is another frequent Democratic Party talking point, but as Tim Morrison, an alumnus of that very NSC staff, explains, the Trump White House refashioned but did not dissolve its pandemic response office. These falsehoods are employed in the service of the Democratic election year narrative, that the president let the virus spread unchecked across America. No mention is ever made by the loyal opposition that Trump took decisive, early action by restricting travel from China, or that Joe Biden himself assailed Trump for this move, accusing him of xenophobia. And then we get, on April 3rd, Biden campaign says he backs Trump's China travel ban. The Associated Press, come on, they're the bastion of honest journalism in this country, the best standard we have, right? They said the Democratic candidates were lying about Trump dissolving the pandemic response team. That's the AP. Who am I supposed to trust? It must be so exhausting for the media and Democrats to be wrong all of the time. For Joe Biden to come out a month later and says, okay, I confess. The travel bans were actually a good idea. You're a month after Dr. Fauci, dude. Where were you? Were you even paying attention to what was going on? Donald Trump's approval rating is skyrocketing. I'm not making these things up. Perhaps I'm just ahead of the cycle, but I really doubt that all of the people in America are listening to me and I'm somehow influencing. The reality is I'm seeing what actually is. I'm not always right. I'm actually frequently wrong. But certainly right now, if the Democrats have finally come around to saying the travel ban was a good idea, then Trump was not incorrect. And the content I made in the past several weeks saying Trump is right about the travel ban are also not incorrect because everyone now agrees. What we're really seeing is that the Democrats, people like Schumer, Pelosi, Schiff, they're not paying attention to what's really happening. That's why when Donald Trump started the task force in January, they were busy impeaching him. It's why when Donald Trump initiated the travel ban, they criticized him for it. It's why on March 12th, they criticized him for it. And then what? 2 or 3 months later, they're finally on board. That's amazing. And I'll give you a really good example. Take a look at this. Letter from President Donald J. Trump to Senator Charles E. Schumer. Now, this letter was also an incredible smackdown, or again, I like to say, nuking from orbit of the Democrats, where Trump pointed out that Chuck Schumer was wrong and didn't know what he was talking about. Check this out. He says, "Thank you for your Democrat public relations letter and incorrect sound bites, which are wrong in every way. As you're aware, Vice President Pence is in charge of the task force. By almost all accounts, he's done a spectacular job." Schumer said, "Why don't you invoke the Defense Production Act?" Trump said, "We did. The DPA has been consistently used by my team and me for the purchase of billions of dollars worth of equipment, medical supplies, ventilators, and other related items. It has been powerful leverage, so powerful that companies generally do whatever we are asking without even a formal notice. Chuck Schumer wanted a senior military officer involved or in charge, and Trump responded, a senior military officer is in charge of purchasing, distributing. His name is Rear Admiral John Polowczyk. He's working 24 hours a day and is highly respected by everyone. Schumer apparently didn't know that these things had already been done. And Biden apparently fell into a similar position where Biden called on Trump to invoke these things. And Trump was like, we did. Are you guys even watching what's happening? Now, to be fair, the Democrats have an election year coming up. Well, Trump also has an election year. So if the I can understand, right? To be fair, they're trying to balance campaigning and winning an election with criticizing the president. I guess there's nothing else they can really do. But at the same time, Trump is also in a re-election year. He's just doing his job. And if he does a good enough job, he'll get reelected. So I guess he's got that going for him, right? He's going to do what he needs to do to help the American people. And if the American people like it, he wins. And he is. His polls are way, way up. But of course, it wouldn't be an election. Well, it wouldn't be America if the media wasn't coming out and just defending the Democrats in nonsensical ways. Check this out. From CNN, the 11 wildest lines from Donald Trump's utterly childish letter to Chuck Schumer. I'll admit, Trump is a little petty. It is. But he's responding to the pettiness, so I'll give him a little leeway. And while I'm not a fan of what I view as kind of unprofessional behavior, I will absolutely admit it's hilarious. It's funny, man. Trump smacking down the Democrats. There's something funny about it. You know, for me, I'm not so heavily invested in either of these tribes. I have no problem laughing when something happens. I really don't care. Of course, CNN is going to come out and criticize Trump's letter, saying it was wrong. Some of these criticisms make just absolutely no sense. But there is one very, very funny thing I want to point out. Donald Trump, in his letter to Schumer, insinuated that Democrats wanted to primary challenge him and get him booted. And CNN writes, number 7, no wonder AOC and others are thinking about running against you in the primary. If they did, they would likely win. To which CNN responds, there's very little evidence that Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is planning a primary challenge to Schumer in 2022. In fact, the only person who is talking regularly about this is, wait for it, Donald Trump. CNN has just proven something quite hilarious. They prove they don't actually read the news and they have no idea what's going on. Allow me to show you an article from The Atlantic, January 18th, 2020. CNN, it took me like 30 seconds to find this. Does Chuck Schumer have an AOC problem? Amid talk of a primary challenge, the Senate Democratic leader cast a surprising vote against the USMCA trade deal, bucking most of his party. I covered this when it happened. CNN, where were you? Yes, pundits and politicos have speculated that AOC may mount a primary challenge against Schumer because she might lose her district, so maybe she'll go for the Senate. Chuck Schumer made a move that many people saw as quite progressive. And they thought the reason may be is because he's desperate to push back the progressives who would seek to primary challenge him. You see how it works with AOC and her strategy is not to win a real general election. It's to run in a place where she knows a Republican will never win, in which case the only thing she needs to do is primary challenge someone. Her district may get removed. She may not actually win because she's facing very serious primary challenges herself, and her base is not particularly New York City based. It's all over the country. So she needs to expand her footprint. Yes, she might actually run against Chuck Schumer. Now, I'm not saying she will. I don't know. But you can clearly see that either CNN is lying or completely clueless. Now, think about what happens from this. Some Democrat operative or whatever will read CNN thinking it's real. They'll see this and say, no one's even talking about it, and then believe it. And then they'll go on to carry the fake narrative that's just not true, and then keep espousing it, and everyone else will believe it. Meanwhile, The Atlantic, well, you know what I'll bet? The Atlantic wrote the story, right? Give it 3 months. They'll come around and say, we never did, never happened. It's like Politico. Politico writes the story saying that Ukraine meddled, and that there was like some anger amongst Trump, and they were trying to scramble because Ukraine was meddling in the election. And then like a couple months later, Politico was like, it actually never happened. Are you going to erase or correct your own story? Yeah, apparently not. But Trump is getting flack from social media as well. And this is once again, this is the third. We got a hat trick. The nuke from orbits. I love that meme, nuking something from orbit. It's kind of funny. So here's what we have so far. Donald Trump's smackdown of Joe Biden saying he wouldn't even understand it if he was watching it anyway, and he couldn't write it. You have the letter sent to Chuck Schumer, and now this is amazing. Trump campaign taunts Twitter with manipulated audio of Biden calling virus a hoax. Absolutely incredible. Check this out. President Trump's re-election campaign tweeted out manipulated audio to make it sound like former Vice President Joe Biden called the coronavirus a hoax in an effort to draw attention to what it views as Twitter's double standard in policing political speech. The new Trump campaign video is styled after an ad released by the Democratic super PAC Priorities USA, which featured misleading audio of Trump describing the coronavirus as a hoax. The president's campaign has flagged multiple Democratic videos for Twitter in which he is heard calling the coronavirus a hoax, arguing that the content runs afoul of the social media giant's manipulated media guidelines. Twitter has declined to sanction the Democratic ads. So basically, Biden and the Democrats ran fake ads where they manipulated Trump, and they did nothing. But when Trump's campaign put out a gag video where Biden gaffed and said we can only re-elect Trump, the full context of which he tried to correct, the media labeled that manipulated. But when Biden lies and he launched his campaign on a lie, Twitter does nothing. So this is the third and final nuking from orbit, where the Trump campaign straight up admits to manipulating audio of Joe Biden saying the virus is a hoax. Will Twitter take action? Well, Twitter, you put yourself between a rock and a hard place, huh? You can admit to your bias and point out it's fake, or you can let it go, and then people will think Joe Biden said it was a hoax. But of course, the media will defend Joe Biden. Joe Biden's cognitive decline is apparent to basically everyone, but sure, activists and media will pretend like it's not true. I always want to clarify this. Not every single person in the media is in the bag for the Democrats, but they often tend to be, which is kind of funny. There's still some people who like to call out Joe Biden and Democrats. It's not all bad. I bring you now to The Hill's opinion piece. Does Joe Biden really want to be president? Personally, I don't think he does. I think he's just chilling at his house in the glory days and he's just running for the sake of running. But more importantly, I think he's just the warm body they need to stop Bernie Sanders. That's the reality. If you look at what Bernie Sanders is doing, he's doing fundraisers for people who are out of work for COVID, something to that effect. I'm not entirely sure what his plan is. He's putting out his plans. He's articulating his thoughts rather well. He's articulate, to say the least. His ideas might not be good, or I might not agree with them, but certainly the guy is a much, much better candidate than Joe Biden is. But here we are. Joe Biden is the nominee. The media protects him, but then some are left wondering, does he even really want to be president? Which brings me back to the first thing that Donald Trump said. He didn't write the tweet. He's not watching the press briefings, and even if he was, he wouldn't understand it. It would seem like Donald Trump agrees with the thoughts of John Iadarola. That's the guy who wrote the article. Does Joe Biden really want to be president? Well, I don't know what his conclusion is, but I'll tell you what. I don't think so. Here's what he writes. Perhaps your knee-jerk reaction to reading this headline is to scoff. How ridiculous, after all. Hasn't Joe Biden been campaigning for president for more than a year now? And hasn't he run for president multiple times over the past few decades? It's a good question. To which he concludes, so when I ask if Joe Biden really even wants to be president, I ask it as a thought experiment for you to consider. But far more importantly, I'm asking it of Joe Biden. Is this what you really want? Is this something you'll really fight for? Because I know a candidate who will. Yeah, Joe Biden doesn't want to be president. And that's why Trump is right. He's probably not watching the press briefings. When you look at these videos of Joe Biden in his basement, what do you see? He's struggling to read a card. Someone wrote it on a teleprompter for him, and he's really, really struggling. It's almost like he's just old and retired, and he's just being a wedge to stop Bernie Sanders. Is that it? I'll tell you what. As much as I wouldn't necessarily advocate for Trump, giving the smackdown to the Democrats like he's been doing. I got to admit, there is some catharsis. It is kind of funny because what are the Democrats doing? Pelosi Schiff investigations, Schumer requesting things already done, Biden tweeting about things and then being wrong and correcting himself a month later. Spare me, man. I'm just not interested in hearing it. Most of the country likes what Trump is doing. It's not perfect. There will be missteps. I'm not going to write a puff piece like Real Clear Politics did saying he's, taking great effort like a wartime president. Oh, come on. He's doing his best. It's all we can really ask for. Can we all just get through this? I'll leave it there. Thanks for hanging out. The next segment will be coming up at youtube.com/TimCastNews at 6 p.m. It is a different channel, and I will see you there.